DaDamaja and Rob Cooper Jr. Music by DNA Beats. And now, All in Politics.
Good evening, and welcome to another exciting episode of the All in Politics show on the All In Network. We got a great season starting off the season 3. I'm your host, Walt, DaDamaja, alongside my extraordinary co-host
at Rob Cooper Jr. What's going on, family?
Oh man, it's been a long time, man. I'm glad we're back in the house once again to bring the real to the people, of the people, for the people, by the people, and as you would call it, the voice of the voiceless.
That's right. I remember when we started this thing 3 years ago. Now that we're in season 3, I think our first show was on the Popeye's chicken sandwich. So
yeah, I'm about to go grab one of them right now, man, in commemoration of that.
I was getting ready to say, Cat's still going crazy over that joint.
Oh man.
So what's going on, my man?
Oh man, there's a lot that we got to get caught up on. A lot going on in the news. A lot that we left off from the previous administration with that debauchery that we had to deal with for 4 years that we can't get back. So I guess the planning is imminent that we move forward with a more constructive plan. And as we said before, we got to start holding our local politicians to task and keeping our foots in their neck so they can provide to the people.
That's right. As we constantly stress on this show, on all in politics is local. And I think the only reason why, fascism really rears its ugly head is because we, the people on the ground, are not necessarily paying attention. And what I mean by not paying attention, I don't mean, in 2016, 2020, 2024, 2028, every 4 years, where we have the big, presidential election, where in reality, the people really don't select the president. Is actually selected by 538 electoral college members. And last I checked, you and I don't have one of those cards, but politics is local. Those are your council races, your mayor races, even your congressional races for state and federal, but most importantly, also school board. See, I know folks who live in Philadelphia, you don't have to worry about this because your school board is appointed by the mayor. So you elect the mayor. Generally in Philadelphia, it's almost always going to be a Democratic leaning mayor, and then he turns around and he selects or appoints his school board that he folks who he wants to serve on the school board. Well, if you go outside of Philadelphia, anywhere out of Philadelphia, and I think really throughout the state, school board members have to be elected. And many times, these school board folks who are on these school boards are generally elected in elections where they're very low turnout. So what I mean by this is happens a lot of time, in off years, when they know the masses of the people won't be paying attention. That's when they slide in their folks to be on a school board. And if you're unfortunately, like someone like me who lives in a very racist rural York County, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a racist who's going to sit on a school board and generally dictate where your the educational system that your child is going to get. So again, and then you follow up, like you said, on the I guess the effects, the lingering effects that we had from the past 4 years. Now that has trickled down in the local. Everybody wants to be the next Trump, even at the very local level of school boards. They want to be that guy. He has emboldened folks who've always, and these are low life people, but and never had any intelligence or any strength to kind of speak out before for fear of repercussions, and probably it should be, he's emboldened them, and now they feel comfortable And I think we want to spend some time on this to talk to folks now, that we have to go back to the time where it's not okay to be a sick racist, where we're going to confront you. We're going to show up at your meetings and let you know, um, not here, not now, not never.
Yeah, that's definitely, and I like to call it keeping a hand on the pulse of America. I know we try to use euphemisms as if to say uh, we're checking the gauge or we're looking at the standards of how America is now. Um, but the last administration has left lasting effects and implications as a deteriorating America. We see now that this insurrection that took place on January 6th is looking for a conclusion coming up this weekend, where they're looking to provide some type of retribution or get those that they feel were unjustly uh, given a title that they shouldn't deserve, because they felt as though that the president at that time gave them a direct order to come down and march on the Capitol and do whatever they want to. But it doesn't negate the fact that they were defecating, urinating, and doing savagely acts while in the Capitol. I mean, you say you're patriotic, but you're doing savagery
Right.
inside the house that created it all. Um, so with that, I mean, we just have to take we have to take a step back and take a closer look at an economy of what's going on with the world, because there's an elephant in the room that nobody wants to discuss, and that is racism. Me and you had many conversations behind the scene about racism, and I don't think up until this point it's making them any money anymore. I don't think that there's a financial gain behind racism anymore, and I think it's a dying animal. But because white supremacy is so entrenched and indoctrinated into policies and the ways of American culture, is that it's hard to detach from the host, if that makes any sense.
No, I agree. It does. Folks are, um, as I mentioned earlier in my previous statement, they feel emboldened, and you hear the national media, particularly during the 4 years, making excuses, saying that this was the voice of the voiceless, folks. They said that the mainstream media or politicians weren't listening to them. Well, I'm just gonna come out. Why should I listen to you if you're a hateful um, person who behaves in an animalistic and, as you mentioned, savage state? Why should I give you a platform? And I think that's the problem, because the national and mainstream and, quite frankly, the corporate media has given this filth platforms. And I think we are ever so sinking ourselves to a state where this can't be always be resolved through voting, unfortunately. And this is where they're trying to take this. As you can see, we talked about some of the backlash. The first thing that they did in many of those areas, in many of those red states, is to take away the right to vote. And generally, they want to take away the right to vote of black people, okay, or the poor and disenfranchised. Um, so the state of America right now, mentally, physically, and emotionally, where is it? Where are we? And where are we going?
Well, first it begins with the education, right? You got to be educated. You can't be ignorant to the fact, and you got to be open and wise and have an open mind to be subjected to being taught and learn about cultures and diversity and things of that nature, which takes us into our second topic, which is America, where are we now?
That's right.
The state of America, whether it's mentally, physically, or emotionally entrenched, how you want to partake your part in society. I mean, we right now are looking at individuals getting upset because of the critical race theory thing.
That's right. That's
Like,
right.
where does that, as an let's say, for lack of better terminology, we're looking at an open forum of discussion, dialogue. Usually, this will be a part of civics that will be taught to you in class, how to communicate and build a dialogue. So now, with the dialogue being expressed, a certain demographic feel as though they're being blamed for everything and try to make them the castaways when such is not the case. In order for you to build, you have to have the tools to do so. So I think that they definitely feel targeted because more and more is starting to come out about history that was taught that may have been wrong, may have been tweaked, or may have been orchestrated in a way to, you know, circumnavigate a certain narrative.
Right.
And I think that because the narrative is breaking down, now a lot of people are starting to feel that they're being, pulled out of the darkness.
And I want to make a point about, and we talk about trying to pay attention to politics that and make it local. The Central York, Pennsylvania School Board last October. Now, get the timing. I'm gonna say it again. Last October, the all-white school board unanimously banned a list of educational resources that include children's books about Rosa Parks. Even they even banned the children from watching CNN's Sesame Street town hall meeting on racism. Now I'm going to go back to this. This is last October. Now, if you go back to last October, wait, let's go to October 2020. What was happening then? Well, what was happening was there was a presidential election that was taking place. And all eyes, remember I talked to you about Trump. I said Trump is nothing but the clown in the bull show. All eyes were on the clown of the bull show, who was holding COVID spreading rallies, who ended up at this time last October catching COVID himself. Okay, getting destroyed on the debate scene on the reg. But while folks was following that clown in the bullfight, local white racist school board members were taking books out of your children's education system. They were so this is before the election was over. This is not a reaction to the Trump losing. This is while Trump was in office. But while he was running around like a clown in a bullfight, they was making moves on your children's education. See, this is what these low-level, uneducated, unintelligent fools have in their mind. This is how hateful they are. Rosa Parks. Why not learn about Rosa Parks? And I also would say this too. And I heard a young white student. She spoke on CNN, and she expressed to the grown-ups, and I'm sorry, to her parents and to the grown-ups on that board, said, "Listen, I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth. I want to know, really, who are the original people." That's another subject for another time. And the other piece is, what are you hiding? What are you hiding? Now, one racist said that it was a parent. I heard, him speaking. Of course, he didn't want to give his name because he's a coward and he's a punk from Central York. He says, "I don't want my children to grow up to be guilty." Well, what do they got anything to be guilty for? How, you know what I mean? So if your behavior was stellar and your history is stellar, what are you ashamed of? And that's the problem here, and that's why then you see, like you said, critical race theory. The 16, we don't want the 1619 project. Well, what is the 1619 project? Well, 1619 project goes back to the year 1619. And I'm gonna be, for historical fact, that's when they say that black folks were brought over here from Africa, but you and I know that black folks were brought over here in 1555 and were studied for 64 years. That was the buck breaking time. So they were making us into slaves so that they can bring the rest of us over here in 1669. But that's another story for another time. But we're not even getting into that. We're just talking about what happened from 1619 to now. Slavery. Um, at the slavery, we Jim Crow. Um, you know, it's on and on. And what we have right now. And I thought about this last week when, you couldn't watch an NFL game. And God rest the souls of the folks who lost their lives and families who lost loved ones on 9/11, on the September uh, 9/11 attacks in 2001. But remember, and they're supposed to kind of bring us together. But we got to remember that Donald Trump was elected by the very same nation that was attacked, the very same nation that is telling folks to come together in unity and love. Donald Trump was elected post 9/11, if I'm not mistaken, not pre. He was elected after we were supposed to come together. So what happened? And now you're still seeing the lingering, effects of this train wreck of a presidential, administration that we had here. But when you get into these things, you look at these things. We want to continue to tell you that Donald Trump is not where he's at, though, without a Central York, Pennsylvania. These are the areas that made him. The funny thing about it is, before 2016, if you asked Donald Trump where York, Pennsylvania was, let alone Central York, Pennsylvania was, he wouldn't have a clue. Donald Trump, y'all, is the biggest con artist ever. He's actually a New York limousine liberal. He grew up that way. In fact, he's pro-choice. He's always been pro-choice. If you don't believe me, what happened to Roe versus Wade while he was in office? It's still intact. The guy is a con artist, and he's preying on the stupidity of people in many of these small towns who are uneducated and are proud of it. Don't wish to be educated, nor do they want their children to be educated. Well, I got news for you, America, middle America. Your kids, they're going to find out whether you like it or not. Okay? They're going to get this information about Rosa Parks. They're going to get this critical race theory information. They're going to get to learn about themselves. If it's not through school, they're going to learn it through other measures. I'm going to make a couple of points here. They don't give guns in these schools, but somehow these guns get into these schools and you have mass shootings in these schools. Okay.
What about drugs?
Drugs, they don't give them drugs in the schools, but we have an epidemic in middle America where now many of these rural kids are strung out on opioids. So they're going to get this information whether you like it or not. And I'm going to give you just one platform, and you could try to go after if you want, but I think it's hip hop. White kids are becoming woke, as you say, by listening to hip hop. Now, I'm going to tell you, hip hop today, I disagree with 75% of what's out there. Many of it's not even close to being representative to what hip hop was originally created for. But again, like I've been saying, the theme that I've been saying all night, that's another story for another time. But you go see some of the folks, when hip hop was waking us up 35 years ago. Today it's waking up white folks. In fact, you go to a Public Enemy, go on YouTube and pull up a recent Public Enemy concert. You will see probably 75% of that audience being white kids. Go to a Wu-Tang Clan concert. It's about 75% of that audience are white kids. Go to Brand Nubian, Tribe Called Quest. You know what I mean? Those hip hop, real hip hop groups and artists, Rakim. These white kids love this stuff. And what's happening is they're getting that information. The same information that was provided to us 35 years ago, they're getting it today. So I hate to break this to you, Mr. Sam and Samantha, or Karen and Todd. in your lily white neighborhoods, you're not safe anymore by keeping information away from your kids. Your kids want this information, they want the truth, and either you're going to get the truth, give the truth to them, or it's going to backfire on you.
And I actually think it's an excellent point, not only for hip hop, but also just the internet in general, right?
That's
Like
right.
we
That's
don't
right.
really need
Right.
schools to educate us anymore. More of what I learned and used throughout my everyday life was not learned in school.
That's right.
So I think that's one of the issues that these people have with trying to ban books and things like that. Like some of those books can be found in Target.
That's right.
One of them, I posted this on Facebook the other day. I forget the title of the book, but one of those books I saw on the list is sitting right here in my house.
That's right.
I bought it at Target.
That's
Rhea
right.
saw it and she liked it, and I grabbed it. And
That's right.
it's important for me to make sure that she understands, her culture as well. So that's why I got her the book. She'll understand it when she gets older.
That's right.
But again, you can block these books out of your school. But if I could go 10 minutes to Target and find it, I could get on Amazon and find it.
Like
it defeats the purpose of what Central's trying to do here. But the reason I wanted to join and talk about this is because I actively live in the Central York School District now. I just bought a house in this district in December of 2019, right before the pandemic. However, this is my first time living here, as you know, Dad. We lived here up until 2004, from 97 and 98 to 2004.
Yes,
right?
And for the record, when Elijah and his brothers were young, I stayed in constant conflict with the superintendent of the schools, teachers. So I want to make sure, just because this hit CNN yesterday, this racism goes way back. In fact, I was one of the first that was responsible in taking the racist issues to Central York. And a year later, they hired my boy Eugene Washington to be the assistant principal, just to add some diversity into their school district. But I diverted. But I want folks to know that this racist this school district has been racist since it's ever been. I don't ever remember, at least since I've been here. I lived in York County for like 25 years now, and I've never known this district to be other than racist.
Exactly. And so this is not a new issue in Central, and I think a lot of people may be surprised because Central, compared to other York County schools, is pretty diverse, right? Like Central has a mix of suburban kids and actually just outside the inner city Black kids, right? And they also caught a huge part of the Baltimore wave that happened here in York. So a lot of, for people who aren't familiar, a lot of Baltimore County Blacks were moving to York, PA, in the early 2010s, right back in that era time, and they were moving here to York County because of the cost of living was actually lower here, despite them still working in Baltimore. So Central caught a lot of that. My high school, Northeastern, caught a lot of that. So Central was probably the most diverse school in the county as far as the different types of students that they had there. Even more diverse than York High, if you're talking about like including white people into your demographic. Central had the most different types of demographics within their school district because they're the central part of York County. But the reason, and I think that's why people are so off guard by this, but this has been years in the making. This is nothing new. And my biggest issue with it, you mentioned critical race theory, earlier when we first started talking about the topic. This has nothing to do with critical race theory.
That's right.
And my biggest issue with that discussion is that critical race theory has absolutely nothing to do with any high school in America.
That's right.
Critical race theory is the legal study of how race is a subculture created to oppress people of color.
That's right.
It's a legal study. It's created by academic scholars.
That's right.
No high school teacher is qualified to teach critical race theory.
That's right.
But here's what Republicans are doing. Similar to what they did to communism, not Republicans, but just politicians in general are doing the same thing to critical race theory that they did to communism. They have turned it into a scare word, right? Because the word race is included in it. They can use it to manipulate uneducated white people who have no idea what critical race theory is, and the fact that their children could never possibly learn it in high school.
That's right.
At the college level course. So what they're doing is they're taking it and turning it into a scare word. They're changing it from what it actually means, and they're using it as a scare tactic to create lists like this that ban content just addressing race at all. The fact that a Sesame Street video that was on CNN is banned is proof that they don't even want you to talk about race. They want to completely whitewash your education. It's the most clear.
That's right.
And the reason this is so polarizing is because every single piece of content that was on their list of bans came from Black content creators.
That's right.
So it was a complete and utter attempt. It's the most blatant attempt that we've seen to just completely eliminate racial discussions from your children's classrooms that we've seen across America. Like that's even right. of the legislation that's been passed discussing critical race theory and things like that, it's never gone this far as what we've seen here in Central.
That's right.
And I think the white parent who was featured on the CNN piece is the typical white parent that's been used, or the typical excuse that's been used to defend such a list. I don't want my child to grow up feeling guilty for being
that's
white.
Right. That's right.
It's not about your child being feeling guilty for being white. One, they shouldn't feel guilty unless they're the ones committing these heinous acts.
That's right.
Currently, and two, there's only guilt there is. The only guilt that's there is if you actually are a racist. That's the only reason you would feel guilty about hearing any of these discussions. Is that you're understanding that you are in fact a racist, and there should be guilt there. That's something you should feel guilty about. It's not just for you being white; it's because you're a racist. That's the only people who are feeling guilty. So
maybe it may be by omission as well.
That's right.
That too, and but even there's no guilt in finding out the truth about your culture's past, right? You didn't really have anything to do with that. I wouldn't feel guilty about something like that. I'd say, man, that's messed up. I want to be a part of the change to resolve this because I wasn't a part of that. Hey, that ain't had nothing to do with me, but I'm gonna work with y'all to make sure we replicate. I mean, we resolve, rectify. Thank you. But was created there, and that's the kind of thing where that excuse is tired and old.
That's right.
And the other big issue that I have, and then what we saw the CNN piece run, was not a single school board member was willing to leave a quote. Really, I think one of them did have one small quote, but none of them were responded to an attempt to be on camera. Right? None of them wanted to address this. They've been when even local media here in York has tried, like the York Dispatch has tried to reach out to them for comments. They've refused on multiple or given very basic blank statements that with no substance behind them whatsoever. If I was a school board that made the decision, why wouldn't I want to put my face and my name behind it? Right? If I didn't, the only reason you would do that is if you know it's wrong. That's right. The only reason why you wouldn't want to address it is because you know you're wrong. And then now they're apparently going to stand by it. Which is disgusting and wrong, but putting the list out in the first place is disgusting and wrong. But the fact that they won't even put their stamp on it, they won't even address it when they get the questions about it is what's most disgusting to me. And it means that drastic change needs to be made to the Central York School Board, and not just that. To me, this is. That's a harder change than what most people think it is.
That's right. That's right.
As diverse as Central is, it's still a predominantly white institution. Let's be very clear that it's a predominantly white institution in a district that's still heavily voted for Donald Trump. So that change is going to be a lot more difficult than what people think it is. And it's to the point where separation from these school districts is going to be the only answer.
Well, the other thing, Joe,
we need black leaders in York, or even outside of York, anybody who cares about black children in York, to step up and create alternative schooling options that not only black kids can take advantage of, but white kids who do want to learn real, true history can attend.
Right. Well, and it's all there are alternatives. The two hosts here both we got tired of the racism, not just in the educational system, but the racism. People don't talk about the racism that goes on a student, and you know this, Elijah. You've been there. In these type of schools, the racism that they have to deal with, that's even outside of the curriculum. At recess, at lunch.
Can I interrupt you real quick? And I'll let you finish your thought.
Sure.
What a privilege it must be as a white parent that the biggest worry you have when you send your child to school is that he might learn a harsh truth about himself.
That's right.
And feel a little bit guilty, right? Whereas someone like myself, or someone even Latino, Muslim, anybody who's in an oppressed minority has to deal with the ridicule of racism on a daily basis from their peers. The privilege it must be of you, your biggest worry to be white guilt. What a privilege that must be.
It is. But at the end of the day, though, like you mentioned, you pay taxes, and they are your elected officials, and even though you didn't vote for any of those clowns, they still answer to you, and they have to answer to you. And I think right now with the citizens of Central York, Pennsylvania, should be irate that they won't talk to the press, because the press is part of our First Amendment. That's the freedom of the press.
Yep.
They are part of our democracy, and it is their job to go in and ask questions for the people, because we all can't, otherwise you're going to have a whole lot of people, storming school board meetings. Everyone can't do that, or storming school board members' homes and stuff like that. You can't do that. So the press is the most civilized way in a democracy to pass through information. And it just goes to show you that, these folks, when they put these policies and procedures in place, and the fact that they're not talking to the press, really shows that they're bogus policies that they can't stand on. Walt and I, we when we started All in Politics, I think like episode 1 or 2, besides the Popeye chicken sandwich, we spent a lot of time talking about critical thinking. And what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is just the gathering of facts before you make a judgment. And that's all critical race theory is. It's just really gathering the facts.
That's it.
Before you make an opinion. But so it's not really about, I'm just going to keep it 100, because I know some of you folks who live in Central York, some of you racists. I know who you are. I coached for years in the basketball scene. You didn't like me, and I can say I didn't like you either. But I can tell you what your issue was with me. You couldn't defeat me. You couldn't defeat me. And nowhere, on the court, off the court, nowhere. And that's the problem. And you want to keep that from your children. So your children may grow up learning facts about black folks who you taught them, not us. You taught them that black folks weren't worth anything. You taught them that black folks was only, 3/5 of human beings. You taught them that black folks were second-class citizens. Well, if you're afraid that you're going to find out that these very people that you look down upon were actually your fathers and your mothers, and the kings and queens of other civilizations that the Western civilization is built off of, that's what you have a problem with. It's not has nothing to do with guilt.
It's the day of reckoning.
Yep. Yes. And Mary Trump, actually Donald Trump's niece, I would highly recommend. She wrote a book out called The Reckoning. It came out last month. I would highly recommend folks go out and get that book. and she goes into all these pieces. She talks very little about her uncle because she's not dealing with her uncle anymore. She's dealing with the American racist society that created her uncle.
The mental health aspect.
That's right, everything. And now we have a mental health problem now. Well, we've always had it. Now we're deciding that we're going to admit to it now, but we're really not addressing it. So these are the things that, you know, I'll kind of not really quote what Mary Trump said, but she said until Black folks are given reparations, and I don't know what reparations mean. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's monetary or whatever, land, whatever. But until Black folks are given reparations, we are never going to have peace in this nation. Or this nation is never going to realize its greatness.
Or even begin the healing process.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You know, because everything is based off the premise of a lie. Like, and until you turn that lie back into truth, it's always going to be, how they say it, a well-dressed lie. A well-dressed lie.
That's right. Walt, it's another great show. I'm glad we jumped off with a banger here. Folks, of course, you can follow me at Rob Cooper Jr. on Instagram, not Twitter. You can also go to our All In Network YouTube channel. You want to like our shows, of course. We have some sports content along with if you like what Elijah Cooper you had to say on a politics segment. Just wait till you hear what he has to say, you know, on this sports segment, what they have to say about the NFL and actually, can you believe it? The NBA season is right around the corner. So you want to make sure that you like those shows. But most importantly, Walt, when they get to the channel, what's the first thing they need to do?
They need to find a nice big area in their home, because they're going to need some room for this. They're going to have to space it out. They're going to have to grab one of their utilized devices, whether it's a laptop, tablet, computer, cell phone, smartphone, smart TV, whatever. You want to take hold of that thing as hard as you can, squeeze it, and smash that subscribe button.
Smash that subscribe button. Well, man, another great episode. And we got some more coming to you, man. This is just the jump off. See, All In Politics Season 3. This is the debut, but we ain't done yet. In Central York, we're going to be tracking what you're doing, and we're going to give a follow-up report to see how you folks are handling our people who are your tax-paying citizens that are in your district. We coming for you. Indeed.
And as we said, and they always keep it this time, nothing is going to be left unturned this season. We're going all in. As is indicated in the name of the show, All In Politics, on an All In network. So with that being said, we thank you for your time and courtesy of listening. If you have any views or comments, please place it below or even give us a call. And we'll gladly have you on the show to talk about politics or whatever else to uplift the people, because that's what we're here for. Each one teach one.
That's right. And you know what? And also, man, shout out to our funky dope producer, Elijah Cooper.
Yeah, peace. I got to get at him, man, so he can give me some leads on these teams, man. I need some extra ducats in my pocket.
Let's go.
All right, so that wraps up another episode of All In Network, bringing us live with the All In Politics. This is the real, the jump off. And I'm signing off, and I'm your host, Walt the Damaja, alongside my trusty cohort.
At Rob Cooper Jr.
Peace.